If you've ever wondered what the heck you actually said at the end of that party,
or wanted a do-over button for those cringeworthy encounters,
then you've experienced what we call the joy of awkwardness.
I'm Mendy.
And I'm Bree.
And we're here to celebrate the awkward.
Embrace the awkward.
And remind you of one important thing.
You may be awkward,
but you're definitely not alone.
Well, that was awkward. Hi, Mendy.
Hi, Bree. Welcome home.
Thank you. It's so good to be home.
It's been a couple weeks.
It has been a couple weeks. I have had a couple of people saying, hey, do you have an episode coming out? And I just want to remind everyone that for a while, because of our busy schedules, we are on an every other week release. So this is the week.
This is it.
Mendy, do you have any awkward stories from the last 2 weeks?
Oh, so many. But Bree, I was hoping we could keep our awkward stories on the theme of our main story today. See, a couple of weeks ago, I put out an ask on social media for people to share awkward neighbor stories. And we got so many funny stories.
Oh, yeah.
One of which I'll be telling you today. So, yeah. So, Bree, do you have an awkward neighbor story or a past awkward neighbor situation?
You know, I actually was talking to my daughter about this. It's an old story, but it did come up this week, which is that when Jeff and I were living in New York years ago, we had a big, beautiful Alaskan Malamute named Basho.
Oh, I remember Basho.
Yeah, he was an amazing dog. He was bigger than me. And so we had worked really hard to find an apartment that would take Basho. And then we finally found one, and it was a perfect apartment. It was a perfect apartment for two artists. It was a basement apartment. But it was in a beautiful brownstone in Borum Hill, which is a lovely neighborhood in Brooklyn. And we had a garden in the back. And it was a walled garden. It was completely protected. And our landlady said, hey, it's okay if you want to put a dog door in the back door, you can do that for Basho. So we put a dog door in, but then our dog kept disappearing. And turned out he would go out the door and up the stairs into our landlady's apartment because she had a dog door. Anyway, it was really awkward because here was my big giant dog sneaking into my landlady's apartment and hanging out there all day long in her beautiful 3-story brownstone.
Wait, did she know this was happening?
Well, I wasn't sure because she was at work all day, and I was really nervous to bring it up with her because I was worried that she was going to be mad at me. So anyway, as soon as I brought it up with her, it was all fine. But it was that moment of being nervous and thinking, how do I bring this up with my landlady? It's so hard to find an apartment in New York. I don't want her to be mad at me. You know, all of that stuff.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Having Basho come visit, it's like having a bear run around your house. I like to imagine him going visiting his dog buddy upstairs. I imagine if she had a doggy door, she had another dog and them just like hanging out all day and like eating chips.
Funny that you should say eating chips because he gained about 10 pounds while we lived there. Because she was feeding him. So he would have breakfast at our house, and then he would go upstairs and have breakfast at her house. And yeah, he lived the life in Brooklyn.
Oh my gosh, that is adorable. Did it keep up? Like, was she like, this is kind of sweet and cool?
Oh, absolutely. When we moved away a couple of years later, she was most upset because she felt like she was losing another dog.
And hey, go Basho. Basho got more square footage in New York City than you guys.
He was living the dream. When we finally moved to the country, he was disappointed. He was really meant for urban brownstone life. Yeah. How about you, Mendy? Have you had an awkward neighbor situation?
Yes, mine is more recent. It also has to do with my dog, the recently departed Nana. So one day I was at my house all alone, like a Saturday afternoon, and Nana needed to go out. So I got her all leashed up. I go out of the house, and I noticed that my next door neighbor, who is elderly, is picking up a doggy poo. And that's my doggy poo.
Oh, Nana.
Nana got very old before she passed, and so we could let her out, and she'd just wander into the neighbor's yard and hang out. And he thought it was very sweet. He had a tree that she loved to lie under during her golden years. But I felt so bad because, not only because it's rude of me not to have picked up my doggy poo, but also because he's old and it was taking him like forever to bend over and get out his napkin. And I was like, crap. So I went back into the house. Now, Bree, in this situation, what would you have done?
I would get a plastic bag, go out and say, I'm so sorry. Let me get that. I've got this for you.
Yep, 100%. I would have done that too, had I not been stoned.
Oh!
Yeah. So I'd had a little bit of a gummy, and it's hard to figure out, how they're going to hit, like how much of it you should eat. So I was very stoned and was like, I should get a bag, go over there on my way to taking Nana out and pick up the poo and profusely apologize. But I was like, I can't talk to him while I'm high.
I bet you couldn't.
But Nana really needed to go out. So if Nana hadn't needed to go out and I needed to go somewhere to go get groceries, I would have just stayed inside, locked the door, waited to not be high, ordered food in, and then talked to him the next day. But Nana was like, oh, I really want to go out, and jumping up and down. So I picked Nana up, and Nana's big. She's not Basho big.
She was big.
She was a big girl. I picked Nana up, and I cracked the door open, and I waited for him to very slowly turn away and start walking towards his trash can. And I ran out my front door and carried Nana like halfway up the block in the other direction. And we live on a big circle. So I started walking her the other direction. And before I came home, I kind of had to hide behind some neighbor's shrubberies, waiting for him. And super stonily, waiting for him to go back inside. And then I finally made it back home and profusely apologized to him. I think it was the next day. And I knew that he hung out at this little diner in town called Jack and Jill. He goes and hangs out there during the day. He's sort of like a superstar there, has his own table. So I met him at Jack and Jill.
Did you arrange to meet him at Jack and Jill, or did you just go to Jack and Jill?
I saw that his car was not at his house. So I knew he was at either Jack and Jill or church. That's what I assume.
And you weren't going to church.
I wasn't going to church. So I went to Jack and Jill, this little cutesy old school diner, and got him a $50 gift certificate. I was like, I want to at least buy you lunch.
That was so nice.
Yeah. Well, I felt really bad, but like I said, I could not have talked to an elderly person holding my dog's poop while I was stoned.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know how you function with edibles. As you know, I had one experience inadvertently ingesting a THC gummy, and never, ever will I do it again. And always will I have compassion for someone who has found themselves a little too stoned with an edible.
Hey, Bree, will you put a link to that episode in the show notes?
Yeah.
Our story today comes from Jack. And Jack had an awkward neighbor situation, too, that'll really have you guys think twice before you go next door to borrow a cup of sugar. Mm-hmm. Jack's young, and he's married to the love of his life. They've got 2 adorbs little ones, and he and his wife have just bought their first precious little bungalow in a super cute old school neighborhood on the West Coast. And all the houses are pretty modest and like that mid-century humble but charming. And they can throw their littles in a wagon and drag their little asses to the park a few blocks away. They can bike to work. It's like 50s, but not just white people. And the wives get to have careers too.
Oh my gosh. And it probably costs like $1 million for a tiny little bungalow,
right?
Minimum.
And these houses are very close together, so you get to know your neighbors pretty well. There's lots of morning waving, lots of porch swinging, lots of other young parents, too. So Halloween is fun because you could take your kids begging in a big group, and you can sip little bevies from solo cups on your walks. And Jack's kids aren't old enough, but when they are, they can legit walk those kids to their first day of kindergarten at the neighborhood public school, which is like just 4 blocks away. Now, Bree, we were both kids in the country and didn't get this quintessential experience of Americana. We didn't have the Wonder Years. No one left it to our beavers.
Well, we were left to our beavers, yes.
That's some foreshadowing that and you don't even know it.
Oh, I'm interested now. No, I always wanted to live in a neighborhood like that. I really did.
Yeah, I got to have that experience because my dad's mom, my grandma Barbara, she lived in a little town about 20 minutes away from the farm I grew up on. So I would go visit her and get to ride my bike around and do all that cool stuff that people with asphalt have. Actually, my grandma had a friend of me who lived within sight of her house. Her name was Dora, and she was my grandmother's ex-husband's next wife. So she married my grandma's ex-husband after my grandma had divorced him.
Small town antics.
Oh, and Dora had a new black top, and that was all the rage. So when Dora wasn't home, my grandma would get me and a little neighbor girl to ride our bikes over to her house and ride around on her blacktop and slam on the brakes and put skid marks on her blacktop. And my grandma would sit on the porch and smoke and laugh.
I love these little tiny acts of aggression.
Yeah, I love it too. I love it too. But Jack's neighborhood is pretty chill. If they're judging, they're keeping it to themselves or posting it on Nextdoor. Everyone waves and is bucolic.
Bucolic.
That's another word that doesn't mean what it sounds like.
It sounds gross, right? It sounds like when you get a burp stuck in your mouth or something, but...
Yeah, it sounds like barfing, like bucolic.
Yeah.
I guess because the colic is in there.
Because bleh.
Yeah, bleh, and then colic.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like a sick baby. But this neighborhood is sweet. There is one neighbor who never waves, who keeps to themselves, a young, seemingly single woman who walks by each day with her hoodie pulled up over her head and her earbuds in. Jack's next door neighbor. She never waves. She never says hi. Bree, remember when you waved at everyone in Cape Cod and they hated you for it?
Maybe she's from Massachusetts.
Maybe. But Jack, he doesn't take it personally. He's actually an introvert himself, so he gets it. He has to be on for his work, which is teaching night classes at the local community college. So people think that his public presence means he's always ready to connect and make small talk. But he says that, and this is his metaphor, and I love it and can totally identify. He says he's like that robot band at Chuck E. Cheese, where he can light all the way up when he has to, but he has to have time to power down. And for him, that's the solace of his little home and his little family. He also loves to hunker down at home and watch baseball.
Oh, I love baseball. What was his team?
I don't know. And you know what? People are very passionate about their baseball teams. I don't want to let's say the Red Sox, and then Jack hears this and is like, what the flip?
We don't want to get political with this,
Right.
yes.
So we are going to anonymize the baseball team. Bree, can you invent a baseball team, please?
For West Coast,
Yeah.
the Portland Pandas.
All right. So one night, pretty late, around 10:30, Jack has a friend over. His wife and kids are in bed, and the guys are up having the beers, watching their beloved Portland Pandas play in the World Series.
Ooh, they made it far. Our team is doing well.
Now, the TV is situated in front of a couple of large doors that are mostly glass. There are curtains over the doors, but the curtains don't go all the way to the edges of the door frames. You know, like if the curtains went all the way to the edge, they wouldn't be able to open or close the doors.
Right.
And if they were able to look through the TV, they'd see the neighbor's house about 10 feet away. This is important information for visualization.
10 feet away. Gotcha.
There's a commercial break, so Jack gets up to go into the kitchen and re-beer himself and his friend, who we'll call Buddy. On the way back into the living room, he catches something out of the corner of his eye through that crack in the curtain that is usually not visible behind the TV. He doesn't believe his eyes. He stops. He's stunned. Oh my God. His friend, Buddy, is like, dude, beer, they're about to pitch. Get over here. But Jack is frozen in place. Jaw dropped, head cocked slightly to one side, brow furrowed. Absolutely transfixed.
What is it, an alien?
Well, Buddy wonders too. He comes over to him and he shakes his shoulder gently because let's not spill the beer. Dude, are you okay? Jack mumbles. It's a booby. His friend looks out the window. And sure enough, it's a booby. And not just one.
Two?
Two! Buddy's like, dude. They see Jack's neighbor, the quiet little introverted church mouse who never makes eye contact and always seems to be trying to actively disappear, lit in that unmistakable blue-white light of a computer in a dark room, wearing a very extroverted outfit and seemingly making eye contact with someone and doing a hoochie-coochie dance.
Oh, my.
Yeah, nary a curtain or blind in sight. Jack says he could tell that this show was being broadcast. In his words, I saw enough to see enough. And his friend's like, dude, she's getting it on. Jack snaps out of his surprised stupor and is like, hard pivot, and he nudges Buddy back to the couch and he tries to shake the scene from his mind and just focus on the game.
How could they focus on the game after a show like that? It's the Portland Pandas versus the neighborhood knockers.
Well, Buddy is leaning over on the couch, obviously trying to catch another glimpse, but...
Oh, Buddy, no.
Yeah, so Jack punches him in the arm and is like, dude, be cool. They finish the game, and Buddy starts to walk home. Buddy actually tries to hang a right to walk by that neighbor's house, and she's going to need a name.
Well, we've established that she's from Massachusetts.
All right, so what about Boston Betty? So Buddy tries to hang a right to walk by Boston Betty's house, and Jack's like, dude, you live that way, and steers him towards his house.
Yeah, bad Buddy.
Naughty Buddy. Jack gets in bed that night, and he feels a little dirty. Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't harbor any prim judgments about Betty or this hobby or profession or really interesting work call. Mm-hmm. He's assuming she's doing like OnlyFans or something. But he is worried. I mean, she has no curtains, and this is usually a safe neighborhood, but there's also an alley behind every house. There's lots of foot traffic in the alley and in front of their street in their neighborhood. And he's like, this isn't safe. Like, what if he were a pervert or a pervert traipsing by?
Or a Buddy.
Or Buddy, right? Or a creep or a stalker. And this is kind of a scary time for this small city. In the previous couple of years, there had been an uptick in violent crime, particularly against young women.
So he was worried.
Yeah. I mean, what if she made the wrong kind of fan on accident? Mm. So he feels like he has to tell her, but how the hell do you bring that up, right? Especially as a dude talking to a woman.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah, and he grew up with a pretty mom as well. Oh, our kids have to go through that.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, those poor things. He remembers being young and having gross guys hit on his mother, and although she dealt with it deftly, he remembers that feeling from a young age of wanting to protect her and defend her.
Yeah, I get that.
He's also got a sister. He's got a daughter. As a teen, he was really into punk music.
Okay, that's a non sequitur.
No, it's related. It's related. It's about that culture. But Bree, did you ever listen to punk music or go to punk shows?
I did.
Really?
I did.
What was your favorite punk band?
Fugazi.
Oh my God.
Yeah?
I did not know this about you. Well, you know from your experience that these shows can be super boy heavy.
Mm-hmm, that's why I went.
Punk is loud. It's brash. They thrash. But mostly, they are super sweet people. And Jack put this so well in our interview. It's a place where it's okay to bring your big feelings. But every scene has its a-holes, so the mosh pit could go too far and dudes would start fighting each other.
I also went to the Ramones.
Oh my God, you saw the Ramones?
I did.
I never knew this about you, Bree.
Yeah. I wore combat boots and had short blonde hair. I was punk, damn it.
Hey, ho, let's go. This is awesome.
You get a lot of attention as a girl at a punk show.
Well, and girls like you were scarce on this scene, so they'd constantly get head on by thirsty creepers. So Jack's used to this feeling of wanting to stand up for girls.
Okay, so you're telling me that his intentions are noble.
Absolutely. He's an Eagle Scout. He has honor. And Bree, he's also been with his wife since they were teenagers, too. So there was even more training there in how to be a man who supports women.
Wow, from a teenager. Wow. Okay.
And also, I was thinking practically from a business standpoint, if she's making a living doing this, and you know what? You go, girl. This window show is virtually giving away free product.
You can do samples.
But not the whole bottle of lotion. So the next morning at the breakfast counter, he decides to address this with his wife. So I saw some titties last night, and they weren't yours. What would you say, Bree, if your hubs said that to you at breakfast?
Were they better than mine? I'd really probably say, like, why were you looking at somebody's breasts?
Well, she doesn't get mad. They've been together for years. They're way beyond the jealousy thing. So no issue there.
Man, she's way more punk than I am.
Right. So he explains to her the whole situation, and they decide that the best course of action is for him to do the neighborly thing and write Betty a cordial neighborly letter. And he has to be very careful in the tone so it doesn't seem like a judgment of her choices, right? So in his words, quote, I tried to be polite and vague.
Did he use ChatGPT?
ChatGPT didn't exist back then. I would love to go on ChatGPT and just plug this in as a cue and see what it comes up
Maybe
with.
we'll do it and put that in the show notes.
Yeah, be polite and vague. Bree, would you like to read this letter?
Sure. All right. Dear neighbor. Hi, how's it going? That's a good start.
Yeah.
I am your next door neighbor at 314. Just wanted to give you a heads up that you may want to maybe put a curtain over the window facing our house. Best, Jack. Oh, man.
What?
I just think there's a missed opportunity here. I mean, Jack, all due respect, I think you did your best, and I can see that you were trying to be vague, but he could have made some good shrubbery jokes. I can see that you've trimmed your bush.
Oh, my God. You can't do the jokes, though, because then he'd look like a butthole.
Okay.
All right. So he's got this letter written on one of those big yellow legal pad papers, and then he has to deliver it. How would you deliver it, Bree? Would you go face to face? What would you do?
I would probably stick it in her door, stick it like in that place in the, like in
The door crack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the architectural term.
The door crack.
The door crack, sticking in the door crack. So he's the same. There is no way he's going to face her. So one morning, he waits by the window, waits for her to pass by in her hoodie and her headphones, and he spots her. He peeks out the door to make sure she's walked all the way out of sight. Then he checks the street to make sure all is clear, and then he tiptoe runs across the side yard to her porch and hastily tapes the letter on bright yellow legal pad paper to her door and runs back.
Does he at least fold up the letter? I mean, it's not open for everybody to read, is it?
I would imagine that he folded it.
We'll just assume that he did.
Yeah, that's great. You don't want the ups man to see that. Although he was vague. He said you might want to get some curtains.
Even so.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
we'll
he's-
assume that he folded it.
He folded it, ran back to his house, closed the door. Whew, that should do it, he thinks. I earned my badge today. And he tries to erase the whole affair from his mind. He does go get something out of his car in the early evening and peeks over and notices that the note is gone, so he knows the message has been received. And hopefully she doesn't feel embarrassed or ashamed or whatever about it. That night, he settles in for the next game in the World Series. Wife and kids are asleep again. Buddy is not there this time. It's just him. He gets up to grab a beer, walks back into the living room, and boom. There's Betty's bagels again. And other bits. The whole buffet. Bree, he even sees a biscuit. And he can't quite believe it. no curtains, and seemingly not a care in the world about that fact. And this time the show is even more intense in other ways than it was last night. There's more sparkles, more choreography, more pizzazz, if you will. This seems a little intentional. It seems his note had actually backfired, as this VIP show was clearly no accident.
Well, that was awkward.
She tried to be so nice about it.
I know.
So what does he do?
He ducks. He crawls to the couch. Holy shit. He goes and grabs an extra sheet from their linen closet. And the only extra one they had was one from the kids' beds. You know how you've got to have extras of those because those little buggers pee everywhere all the time? Mm-hmm. So he hung up a Transformers print sheet behind the TV. And that's where it stays. And when he gets asked about it, when neighbors come over, he just says, "Don't ask, just know it is more than meets the eye."
Did he have any more interactions with Betty?
Oh, hell no. That quick neighborly wave got even quicker. They never took a right down their street and walked by her house anymore. You know how they say, 2 wrongs don't make a right, Bree? Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? 3 lefts make a right. They would just take a left 3 times if they ever needed to go to that side of the neighborhood. That's one of the benefits of those little crisscrossy neighborhoods.
All of that effort to just avoid some titties.
And eventually they moved to the country.
Because of this?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe when your kids get older, that's kind of hard to explain. What would you have done, Bree?
So this is a little tricky, Mendy. First of all, I think he tried, right? He tried. I probably actually would have gotten my wife to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because I think I would have an easier time talking to my neighbor about that than he would. Maybe his wife didn't feel that way. I don't know. But also, it wouldn't be hard for me to have that conversation, Mendy, because I have been Betty.
Tell us about that.
Okay. Let me go back in time a little bit. I grew up in the country. We had no near neighbors. I didn't have curtains on my windows. I didn't think about it, right?
I remember running around outside half naked.
Yeah.
In the country. Yeah, you don't think about it at all.
Then I moved to the city where you're anonymous in the city. You don't know any of your neighbors. You don't know anybody. You know, in Seinfeld, the naked guy, I think it was Seinfeld. Was it Seinfeld, the naked guy? Or was it Friends, the naked guy? I don't know. Anyway, when you're living in the city, you're completely anonymous. You don't know any of your neighbors. We didn't have curtains there either because we were broke. Didn't think about having curtains.
Yeah.
And so I walked around my apartment in New York all the time naked. This is the first time I lived in New York, not when I was living in the brownstone. But that would have been fine too, because nobody was down there to see me. Anyway, so we moved to Savannah, and this is sort of how I operate, right? Like, I don't think about who I am in relation to neighbors because neighbors have never been a real factor for me. Well, in Savannah, I'm working on this movie, and I'm on the set for about 5 days, and the director brought in a bunch of local socialites to fill out a party scene. And so one of these socialites was there, and he kept talking to me, and he was like, "Gosh, you look so familiar to me. You look so familiar." And I was like, "Well, you may have seen me in this commercial."
You've seen my work.
"I'm sure you've seen my work." And so he was like, No, that's not it. That's not it. I know you from somewhere." Finally, after a few days of this, he says, "I know how I know you. You live across the street from me. I have seen you.
Oh.
I've seen all of you." And it ended up being really funny. We became friends. He invited us to a bunch of events after that. Preston was his name. Preston, I'm so glad that you saw me in the nude and that you addressed it with the humor and compassion that you did. But the point is that I've been her. I've been in that situation. Right. And it was embarrassing when that happened, but it was also just kind of funny. And it was like, well, I'm on the 3rd floor. There's only one other person. It's okay.
Besides Superman.
And
Batman.
Yeah, but that would make it
Spider-Man.
easier. Spider-Man, I might be a little embarrassed about. But the point is, it would be easy for me to have that conversation with her because I've actually been in that situation before.
Right.
You know? So I have an unfair advantage for being an exhibitionist as
Right.
well.
Well, I understand that too. I mean, I still, to this day, like changing clothes, I really don't think twice, especially, when it's nighttime and the blinds are over there, but my PJs are right here. Just like
Yeah.
I assume people will just avert their eyes. So totally, I get that.
Exactly. Yeah. So how about you, Mendy? What would you have done in this situation?
I would have done the same thing he did, written a polite and vague note. If it kept up, I would assume that she didn't put two and two together. So I would actually go to her, or in his situation, I would get my wife to go. I just think it's easier if you're the same gender. Like if this were a man masturbating next to his window every night, I would want my partner to go talk to him. And then if they did keep it up, like if it seemed like they didn't care, I'd be mad. Because it's really about that ugly ass sheet that I have to put in my house. Like I lived in a neighborhood like this. I raised my boys in a neighborhood like this. And I loved that house. And it would suck to have a transformer sheet messing it up the whole time. And like if we saw a woman changing, my little boys, if we saw a woman changing outside of her window, I would be like, oh, that's a breast. But seems like something else was happening here. And I can't say, well, sweetie, that's called fingering. So part of it, I do think, like, yes, do what you want in your own house. But at the same time, there is sort of that neighborly, like, is it okay to have a hot pink neon sign shaped like a penis in your window in a neighborhood full of kids? I assume if they had double doors that there was a little patio and they were supposed to use those doors. Do we not do parties on that deck at night? Right? So I think if it seemed like they were just really not caring and not being neighborly, I would probably start a war. Like I'd be like, oh, okay, if you can do stuff in your window, then I can do stuff in mine. Like buy a strobe light, aim it outside, and have it flash at you all night. Because I just think,
Oof.
yeah, well, I can do it too. We can both do it. Or we could get curtains. And I can take this transformer sheet down. Bree, how would you rate this one?
You know, Mindy, I'm going to recuse myself from rating this one because I don't think it's fair for me to do that. But I also do want to extend an apology to my neighbor, Preston, if I made you feel uncomfortable in any way, and to any other neighbors who might have been offended by my inadvertent exhibitionism.
Aw, I don't think they were offended. It seems like you were just changing. You were like, hey, look at it, look at it. For me, I would do, because it's about somebody doing something you believe that they believe is private. You think that for them, they wouldn't like to be told that, hey, you do not have the privacy that you think you have. And then you tell them, and then they ignore it. For me, I'd have to go 8, not higher, because he just wasn't in the same room and the window wasn't open and there weren't sound effects. But for me, it's that feeling afterwards that I wonder if he had of like, wow, I just told somebody that I saw something very private. Did I do the right thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
does he seem like he's the pervert because he looked out of his window, which you are allowed to do? So for me, that cranks it up. That cranks it up there. It's the aftermath.
I feel for him. I think he really tried hard to approach the situation with grace and compassion.
Yeah.
It's a difficult situation. Hey, but you know what we didn't talk about, and I think it's an important thing to talk about. How would Dana get you out of this situation?
My imaginary Dana would have handled this so well. So the note would have been written by Dana.
Oh,
Yeah. So if we go back to the note, dear neighbor, you might want to get some curtains in the window that faces east. From Dana. Dana, who lives somewhere else, not next door, just so you know. And guys, gals, everyone, here's a PSA. If you ever need to tell someone something important, do not own it. Just deflect. Do not have that difficult conversation. It doesn't need to be you who says it. That purloiner at the office that steals your Diet Cokes from the staff fridge, the a-hole that double parks at Wegmans, Yes, they need a note, but it doesn't have to be you that left it. Sign every bitchy note. Dana can handle it, and Dana can handle the aftermath. It's like, what is it, Bree? The 3 Buddhist gates of communication? Does it need to be said? Will they hear it? Are you the one to say it? No. Let Dana say it.
Okay, and that's some wisdom from Mendy today.
Shanti, y'all.
I do want to share a couple of very quick facts about exhibitionism.
Ooh.
Consensual exhibitionism can be a healthy part of any relationship when it's done in a safe and non-threatening environment. Mendy's showing me her breast right now. Anyway, it can enhance intimacy, trust, and communication between partners or friends or podcast hosts.
I feel closer to you already.
So we just want to make sure that, Mendy, I think you can probably confirm that the listener who called in this story would feel the same way, that we want to make sure that no one feels any shame for getting their kink on.
Oh, absolutely not. You just don't want every time you look out your window to see a dude jacking off, or anyone jacking off for that matter.
I will also say that exhibitionistic disorder is a paraphilia that involves non-consensual exposure, which can cause distress or harm to the viewer.
I think that's what I just did to you. I'm sorry.
It can lead to low self-esteem. That explains everything.
Oh.
Depression, anxiety, and other conditions that may worsen mental health. Seriously, people with exhibitionistic disorder may also have difficulty achieving sexual satisfaction in their romantic relationships. And if you think that this is you, please seek help. This is something that a mental health professional can help you with. So we just want to do a little shout out for that. No joke.
Yes, no joke.
Now that we've brought the mood down, let's send these folks off with a jingle, huh?
Yeah. All right. Jack was watching a baseball game.
Saw some hoochie coochie through the window frame.
Told her blind should be obtained.
Well, that was awkward. So if you see your neighbor's clam,
But they don't seem to give a damn.
hey, some folks are just natural hams.
Is that Bree spooky over there, or has she started decorating for Halloween?
Boo. Well, that was
awkward. Nice pumpkins, honey.
Mini pumpkins. This has been an Awkward Sage production.